Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Push with Nick and KB. We are here to do the Evolution, 2025 Part 2, whatever you want to call it, all women's PLE that took place last night on July 13th and kind of wrapped up the weekend in Atlanta, Georgia. On paper, this event looked good, but I think we can say, and we've talked about this many times on this podcast, that the build for this was, leaving something to be desired. But let's see how the women did. Let's see if they lived up to their expectations of the first Evolution event. The first match of the night features Bayley, Lyra, and Becky Lynch for the women's Intercontinental title. We argued on the predictions video that this probably could have main evented. KP, do you feel like this was a good spot for it? And how did you receive the match and result and rating?
So yeah, we did have a discussion about the place of this matchup. It could have been the main event. It probably should have been based on the build and what it means and how big of a contest it was. I think that WWE made the correct call by putting it first on the card. I think if you're not the main event, you start off the show, you start it with a bang, and you get the fans into it. What I will say is that the fans throughout the entire evening, let alone this match, I thought were hot as hell. They were fantastic, and they really were loud for the women. So just a bit of applaudit there for the audience in this one. But yeah, Becky, Bayley, Lyra, they started the show in a great way. They brought the intensity of the feud from the build into the matchup, and they just let it roll. And every single thing that they did was smooth as butter. It was clean. And they all gelled really well together. And you'd expect that from three top women like Lyra, Bayley, and Becky. So no real surprises there. But yeah, they meshed really, really well. There were some nice spots throughout the contest. I think there were a lot of situations where, in a triple threat match, you've got two people going at it, and then you've got one person ready to capitalize. That was the case throughout the entire contest. And that led through right until the very end, which would see Bayley and Lyra getting each other's face. And I think I called this on the predictions podcast, I think you might have done as well, Nick, where they were in each other's face. They were, looking to close it out, and then Becky capitalizes and gets the victory and retains her IC championship. I think, yeah, the writing was on the wall. It made sense to do this, but that doesn't take away from the fact that it was a really good matchup. But yeah, quality opener. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I think it was great. And yeah, I mean, Becky stole the show in the the first women's Evolution against Charlotte Flair. I think she did a very, very good case of following up from that in this opener here for Evolution 2. Nick, what did you think though? Obviously, these three women, they had a lot going into this one. Do you think it lived up to the build?
Yeah, I think it did. My only, I kind of mentioned I didn't really know who was going to win, but I felt like as long as the end game was going to be Lyra, which is obviously still can be, I feel like that's the right decision. But I did think Bayley was going to take it here and kind of continue the hot paving of this belt, for better or worse. I felt like in this kind of rivalry, it just is. It's okay for me because it's so heated and everyone's kind of that into this. So I think it could have worked, but Becky retaining, I think that works as well. Yeah, in terms of where it is on the card, I felt like, yeah, I was a little angry when I saw it lead off, but also I love that kind of competitive attitude that these women have, and that okay, well, we're going to lead off the show. Well, good luck following this up, and that was my exact thoughts. And good luck to anyone who had to follow this match because it was a great way to start the evening. My only real complaint for this match, and nitpicking maybe a little bit, was the amount of roll ups. I know they just like those spots sometimes, and kind of the chain roll up things. But I just feel like we don't quite need those as much as they give them to us. And then obviously that being the ending as well, with the roll up, I don't love that either. And what was otherwise a near perfect match, I could have done without the roll. But yeah, I understand the necessity for it. But again, I say that every time someone gets rolled up, and sometimes it's just nice to have a definite ending. But regardless, I think it's clear that we're far from over for this rivalry. So yeah, other than that, it was an incredible match. All three women, of course, that we would expect from them. Yeah, what a banger to start off the show. I also gave this one 9 out of 10. So yeah, great way to start off Evolution. And yeah, the intensity really didn't stop from there, though. As we head into the next match, the women were playing this game all night. Who's going to drop the ball first? And honestly, I would argue that it really didn't get dropped. Every single match, every single woman came to show up and show out, and they did just that. Jordynne Grace versus Jayne for the NXT Women's Championship. Yeah, we had really talked about this one quite heavily after the NXT reaction based on Jacy getting pinned by Blake. KP, how did this one play out in terms of, as a match itself? The result obviously maybe being a bit surprising, at least to me, and then your overall rating for this one.
So going back to the Evolution predictions video, I think it was very clear to me at the time that I assumed that Jordynne Grace was going to win, and I didn't really think anything else of it. I thought that, Jacy Jayne's time as the NXT Women's Champion was over. But then, when watching NXT's Great American Bash on Saturday, just sort of come to me that, Jacy Jayne taking the pin in that match, that was really telling. And it's almost as if WWE gave it away in that very moment, because having the champion pin twice on the same weekend, I thought was just a little bit too much. Didn't really think that was going to be a great idea, so I pivoted. At the last minute, I changed, and then I realized that Blake Monroe pinning Jacy Jayne, I got a feeling that she thinks she's better than Jordynne Grace, and in that moment she realized that she's the one that can take the title from Jacy. So when it came down to it, and Jordynne and Jacy delivered a really good matchup here. I think that, like you said, they didn't drop the ball; they kept rolling with it. And this was, I think, Jacy Jayne's probably her best match. In terms of a one-on-one singles competition, I don't remember seeing a better match of Jacy Jayne's up until this point. And that includes her taking the title from Stephanie McCare. I think this was just a much better contest than that particular one was. But up until, the fatal influence interference, which we all expected, and Blake Monroe, nullifying that, for her then to have the NXT Championship in her hands, slamming it into the back of Jordynne Grace, which sets up the rolling encore for Jacy Jayne. It was at that moment that it all just pieced together, and I failed to see that a few days ago, but it wasn't literally until the Great American Bash that I thought, you know what, hold on a minute, something's not quite right here. But this was the right call, I think, actually. Looking at the face of it, this now propels Blake and Jordynne into what could be a really heated rivalry and a feud. You've got Jacy, who's going to go on to Masha Slamovich in that title situation. So actually, I think this is definitely the best call. Like I said, I failed to see it at first, but thinking about it, reflecting on the whole situation, it just makes complete perfect sense. So fair play to Jacy and Jordynne for on a great match to begin with. Fatal Influence for not being too heavily invested and involved, which was quite nice actually. And then Blake Monroe just being the person to take some of the spotlight for herself in this matchup, which I think didn't take the whole thing away from Jacy. We'll still give our flowers and plaudits to her for what she did here in this contest, but Blake definitely comes out shining in this situation as well. So two big bonuses and pluses here coming from this NXT Women's Championship matchup. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Not quite on the scale of the first matchup, but by far nowhere near a bad match. It was great. It was good. It was a good continuation of the show, and credit to where it's due for Jacy Jayne. I think she's surprising a lot of people with this current run, and fair play to her. She's getting the credit that she deserves, I think.
So funny enough, I actually have on my notes here that this was Jacy Jayne's best match of her career. So clearly not either that or we just have two biased opinions. I don't know. But regardless, I think it's fair to say this was a great match from her. And, she keeps getting dubbed as this transitional champion, but she looked damn good here, in my opinion. Definitely held her own against someone like Jordynne Grace. So, I think eventually we have to put some more respect on her name. And outside of her getting pinned the day before, I, for one, did not see the Blake stuff coming. I think there were some signs. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, there were some signs, especially in the when we have the segment of Jordynne asking Blake to be there for support in her corner. There were some signs of hesitancy there, and so maybe that should have been the telltale sign. And then at the beginning of the match, as Fatal Influence is coming into play, you don't see much reaction from Blake, so maybe that could have been a sign as well. But regardless, I yeah, I come away from this match liking very much what I saw from an in-ring perspective. I feel like, as you kind of mentioned too, there wasn't too much interference, and I've heard nothing but good things about Blake Lively as a heel. Obviously, as it under a different name in previous industries, but yeah, I'm looking forward to this run. I'm looking forward to her heel run. I'm looking forward to what Jordynne has in store for us. I do feel a bit bad for her. She always seems to be um, in that spot where she's very, very close, but can't quite get what she needs. That will make, obviously, when she does get it, that much sweeter. And yeah, I walk away just feeling great for Jacy Jayne. And she's proving that she does belong here, and that the choice to have her win this title wasn't just a fluke. So as for my rating, I gave this one an 8.5 out of 10. So just a tad bit higher. Yeah, I loved everything involved here, and I felt like we very much have a ton of story coming out of this match, as NXT always tends to do. Moving on to the next match, we had the Fatal 4 tag match for Roxy and Raquel's women's tag team titles. Yeah, a lot to go through here, but I think maybe we just hit some quick notes here in terms of how we felt everyone's performance was, and then obviously your prediction coming to be true, KP, and Roxy and Raquel retaining, and it looked like some good chemistry going on there. KP, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, first and foremost, really happy that Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez were able to defend their titles successfully here. I think Judgment Day winning was the correct call, and I just think that their story, is still needing to be told. And obviously, depending on how long Liv Morgan's going to be out for, I think that's the very interesting part here, because if we can, extend their reign up until that point, I think that's when things get really, really interesting and spicy. So, yeah, I mean, they could have maybe done a little bit of hot potato in that time being, but I'm glad they haven't done that, because these titles have been like that for a long time. So I don't think we need to do that. We can have a prestigious reign. We can have these two, really gel together, create a dynamic where they're a great team, and then Liv comes back in, and then there's, fireworks and whatever happens from there on. I just think this is the best call. So really happy about that. Secondly, going into each team, Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez. Yeah, I think Roxy started with Kairi Sane, if I remember rightly. So they were involved in the mix quite often, quite frequently, especially Roxy, more so than Raquel, even though Raquel did finish the contest and get the victory whilst pinning Ruca. But yeah, I think that Judgment Day, showed up and showed out, which was quite nice to see. The champions getting involved and not shying away from the action, which for heels we've seen in these type of matchups quite often in the past. That's quite nice. Really want to have a shout out here to Kairi Sane and Asuka. I think that out of the four teams, these two probably gelled the most in this matchup. I think their team attacks were really fluid. I think that they, just teamed together really professionally quite well. And they showed, why they've been, champions in the past together on 2 occasions. So they definitely brought a level of experience here into this tag team matchup. And yeah, they looked very professional doing that as well. So yeah, very fluid, very nice. And it was great to see them having a nice opportunity to showcase what they can do together as a team. Ruca and Zaria, I think they were probably the team that had the least exposure in this matchup, I would say. And that's not a negative, because they did get involved a fair bit. But I think, comparatively speaking to the rest of the other teams, there is somebody that has to have a little bit of a foot back in the contest. But by no means did they shy away. There was a nice moment in the matchup where Ruca would get her Soul Snatcher onto Charlotte Flair, which was, a great move, always is to see. To hit it on someone like Charlotte Flair is obviously a great moment for her. Zaria hitting a spear on Ruca, accidentally, while Charlotte would protect Alexa Bliss, dragging her out the way. That shows chemistry between Charlotte and Alexa, but also shows, the ongoing dynamic between Zaria and Ruca, with their maybe lack of chemistry on some occasions. So, yeah, just, I thought that was quite nice, just continuing to do that. And, yeah, what they've done on NXT recently, just building that up still, which is good. Charlotte and Alexa Bliss, want to highlight the fact that Alexa always gets a really good reaction. We expect that on a weekly basis, because she's one of the most popular women in the division. However, Charlotte Flair, she had probably one of the loudest reactions I think I can probably recall Charlotte ever having. I'm not saying that it is the loudest, but it's got to be up there with her loudest reactions. The crowd were popping off for her, and she was loving it. You could see the emotion on her face. You could see how much it meant to her. I think naturally, we've been so accustomed to disliking Charlotte Flair over the years because of how much she's been pushed down our throats, or whatever you want to have, as your description of Charlotte in the past. But this feels different. This feels quite unique for Charlotte Flair and how we're perceiving her at the moment. And the fans absolutely loved her. They were showing her adulation, and it was great to see and great to hear. It put a smile on my face watching it. And I think Alexa and Charlotte really showed moments of chemistry here in the contest. I've already mentioned that very briefly a moment ago. But I think they really showed up as a team together here, and they put on a good show as well. But yeah, all four teams gelled really well together. Really enjoyed this match. I thought it was a lot of fun to watch. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. That's by no means a bad score. I just think that based on the previous matches before this, I think I did prefer those two. But I've shown nothing but positives in this contest. I think maybe if anything they could have had a bit longer. That's really my main critique from this. But yeah, fun tag team match, right winners. Each team had their moments. Job done as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, great stuff. What about you, Nick? What did you think about this one?
Yeah, I think with a match like this, it's chaotic. I think that's fair to say. But also, you worry about a team not getting enough time, or one team, not gelling like they should, or with all these moving parts, someone misses their beat or something. And this match really didn't have that. As you kind of alluded to, every team kind of had their moments, some more than others, obviously, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast. For me, kind of going off your Charlotte stuff, we're so accustomed to disliking her that her face gimmicks usually at first glance are like, no, that's not going to work, and it really hadn't up until now. Props to WWE. They've made, with the work of Charlotte, whatever, they've made Charlotte into a baby face and a likable one. The crowd, as you mentioned, they were chanting, "We want Charlotte" before she got tagged. I don't even think her team was in the match at that point, and they were shouting, "We want Charlotte." So, you know, something I never thought I would see, thought was impossible, but it's worked. Yeah, the Kabuki Warriors clearly showing why they are a tag team, why they've had success. They are both, I would argue, at their best when they're in this tag team. Obviously, Asuka is always great, but Kairi especially, she definitely thrives in the tag team setting. Just looks much more comfortable in it. Yeah, Zaria's accidental spear. It's just a matter of when, right? Yeah, I think we're getting it probably sooner than I initially would have thought. And then the Judgment Day, Raquel Rodriguez. I feel like since Night of Champions, something has clicked with her on the main roster. She's changed her kind of in-ring work as a more of a I guess a big person, a big wrestler. I feel like she wasn't really working like that in the past, and very much is now. She's becoming this force that to be reckoned with, and going forward, it kind of reminds me of her days back in NXT. And Wade Barrett actually, as I was sitting here thinking this, mentioned exactly that. She was dominant in NXT, and it feels like she's going back to her roots, so to speak. And then her and Roxy, they gelled really well together. You wouldn't know that they haven't worked together, in a while. So, yeah, nothing but positive things to say here. Some pretty creative spots, I think, is fair to say. I'm not sure the ref knew exactly who was legal sometimes, but it didn't matter. The match was fun, great angles. Everyone comes out of here with an angle going forward, and yeah, progress storyline, which is always great to see, especially on a PLE. I give this one an 8 out of 10, so just a notch above. But yeah, like I said, I kept waiting for a match to drop the ball, and it just didn't seemingly happen. So moving on to the next match, I would say this might have been the first match where I felt like it wasn't quite on par with the others, but still a very good match. Tiffany Stratton defending her WWE Women's Championship against Trish Stratus. Something about Tiffany's matches, they're not perfect, but for me, they're always entertaining, fast paced. Maybe that's one of the issues. Maybe a little too fast paced, and always hard hitting. And to me, this was no exception. My concern was the dynamic between Tiffany and Trish. Obviously, Trish, almost being 50 now, that was a concern of mine. But KP, how did you feel this one turned out? Did you feel like that was an issue, or did you feel like this one went pretty well?
So going into this match, this was probably the one I was looking forward to the least on the card, I would say. Didn't really have a lot of high hopes for this one, and in terms of the build, we discussed that in great detail of how lacking it was there. Both women's world titles were in that respect, actually. But yeah, looking at the match itself, actually, Tiffany and Trish, I thought they put on a really good contest with each other. I think that Trish just doesn't ever seem to lose it. Yeah, it wasn't the most like clinical performance that you'll ever see, but it was good. There was nothing overly bad about the contest, and I think that Trish Stratus didn't look completely lost there. I think that she was she was killing it. Didn't lose a step really. And Tiffany Stratton, I think, gelled well with Trish as well. So there were moments where they raised the heat up a little bit, and we mentioned that I think in the podcast as well, leading up to this one, about them sort of like trying to put a little bit more of a personal stance on this. And I think that there are moments where they did make that rise a little bit more than just like a friendly contest with a mate. You know what I mean? But yeah, this was great. I think it definitely turned me on a swivel because I wasn't expecting much, but I came out of it thinking, you know what, that was actually really fun. I enjoyed that matchup, and it was quite nice to see, to be fair. And Tiff comes out of this one, smelling of roses as she has been, for so long now. She's beating so many top names, in her reign so far. And to add Trish Stratus to that list, that's a really, really big name to add on there. So yeah, fair play to Stratton, fair play to Stratus as well. I think they delivered, quite well, to be fair. I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Lower than the previous one-on-one matches that we've already discussed on the card, but I think still it was a really good watch, and definitely surprised me of how full of quality it really was in the end. But yeah, did Tiff the wonder of good, and I think Trish, she had a nice moment from it.
I love the white and red here, typically, representing the good and the evil. I like that play on there. Yeah, as I mentioned, I felt like this was kind of the first match that I didn't feel like was as good as the rest, but it still was a good match. Trish Stratus continues to defy age and logic, just looking very, very smooth. And being in the ring with Tiffany, who maybe sometimes kind of rushes her matches. I think that was my biggest concern, as I kind of alluded to. But I think the match itself, I didn't really see any issues. I think maybe something just didn't click as much for me. I don't really know what it was, but I think it exceeded my expectations. So for whatever that's worth, I still gave this one a 7.5 out of 10 as well. Just maybe it was just because of the matches we've seen before were just very, as just that much better. I'm not sure, but regardless, 7.5 out of 10 still is pretty good, especially for PLE. And two things I kind of noted here were that Tiffany, obviously being the heel here, she knew she had to be. But I feel like Tiffany is ready for a full heel turn. Her character would just work so much better as a heel. And then I think Trish is at a point in her career. We kind of saw some stuff in the build too, and on social media. The fans not being as positive as they have been in the past. I think she's reached that point in her career where she either needs to be in a different role, obviously not shoved in these title matches. I think that's never going to be received super well. But I think maybe her as a heel manager would be a great role, because I think the crowd is kind of reaching a point in her career where they aren't quite on board with her being here from an in-ring perspective as much. Although you could argue, maybe unjustifiably so, because as you kind of mentioned, this match was great for what it was as well. Moving on to the next match, we have Naomi and Jade Cargill in a no-holds-bar match with Bianca Belair as the special guest referee. Little time wasted here. Naomi jumps Jade on the ramp, and all chaos from there. KP, how'd you receive this one?
Yeah, this was a fun contest. Jade and Naomi, obviously a lot of heated rivalries going into this one. It was quite the occasion. They've built up to this moment for quite some time now. They've already had a match beforehand at WrestleMania, and here we are still over in Evolution in July, and we're still going at it here. We're still feuding between the two women. So it shows the the height of the situation for these two. Queen of the Ring, Miss Money in the Bank. They've had a great year, both women. So I'm sure they'll continue to both accomplish things going forward. But yeah, regarding this particular match itself, I think that it was a hell of a lot of fun. There were so many nice spots throughout the contest. Bianca Belair being the special guest referee didn't really add too much to it, which I like. I for those that aren't familiar with my opinion on special guest referees, I don't mind them being there and doing their job and having a really small focus on them in the contest. But it's more about the in-ring superstars. As long as the referee is there to sort of do what they need to do and have a little moment for themselves, that's actually not too bad. I don't mind that. And Bianca didn't really even have that. She did a pretty standard job. There's not really much you can do in a no holds barred match anyway. As a referee, you just got to wait for someone to actually pin their opponent. But I'm glad she didn't take any shade away from this contest. But Naomi and Jade, they both went to the well here. So many things involved: trash cans, tables, kendo sticks, using the tables in different ways and whatever. The announce tables and stuff. There were so many different aspects to this contest, and they really showed up here. Probably the most chaotic matchup on the card for obvious reasons, being the stipulation. I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Jade Cargill getting the win made sense because of her Queen of the Ring, and going into SummerSlam to obviously face, a women's champion. Looks like it's going to be Tiffany Stratton because obviously she is the current women's WWE champion. So that's obviously the state of that one there. But yeah, I think that just made a lot of sense. Naomi's still got the money back contract. She can cast in whenever she wants, so she won't be affected too much by this loss. I think really really fun match. 8.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it, and I think it was nice to see two women just absolutely going hell leather on one another and, coming out in the end. But want to actually give a quick shout out quickly to Naomi, just for the fact that she actually delivered most of the offense here. I think that she dominated the matchup for such a long period of time. Jade just managed to quickly just, catch her off guard on the top rope and then hit the Jaded to put her through the table. This could have gone very differently. If Naomi had, managed to continue that towards the end, we might be talking a little bit differently in terms of the winner here. But yeah, Naomi had a great showing. She's probably the star of the matchup for me personally. And she was very vindictive, which is obviously, very fitting for her character. But Jade just managing to grab the win in the end. Yeah, I think it was the right call, though.
Yeah, funny enough, I was going to hit on that as well because Jade took a ton of offense here. And at this point in the night, I will say at least, you had to feel a bit bad for Naomi. She seemingly can't get a win in this particular rivalry that we thought maybe was over, or at least on hold for a bit. But quickly ramped back up, and you could still feel the passion and the intensity in this rivalry, which is always helps when a match like this. But yeah, a lot of people calling for the Bianca heel turn here. It would just, as you kind of mentioned, it would take away from the competitors in ring, and I didn't love that idea. You could argue maybe she wasn't needed, but I think it was just a cool, adding someone else to an already stacked show. So I had no issues with that. In the grand scheme of things. But yeah, I thought the match was really great. Some really cool spots in there. And then Jade getting another win here. But maybe Naomi would have something else to say about her luck as of late. So we'll get into that in just a bit. But for the match itself, it was great. I actually gave this one. I think it's the first one I had lower than UKP. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Still really good. And great match on the card. Moving on to the women's battle royal. I feel like if there was a match that did in fact drop the ball, maybe it was this one. But these matches are so chaotic. There's always hit and miss moments, and I feel like the crowd might have finally reached a point at this point where they maybe were a bit getting a bit tired. And so I felt like maybe this was that match. There's always that one match that gets impacted by the crowd. But then the ending, they were very much all on board. So maybe just maybe a bathroom break or something at the beginning. I'm not sure. But there were some matches here, or were some moments here that I felt like weren't as well received as they should have been. I know these matches are just so chaotic that maybe they just weren't seen by everyone. And I'm from the spots of Kalani pulling off her Kofi impression to several women doing their Nikki Bella impressions were also fun. But then the Valkyria getting those devil kisses in the matchup as well. And the crowd was certainly alive for those. So, granted, those were more towards the end of the match. But KP, how'd you receive this match? And what'd you think of the winner? I think we predicted both, thinking maybe Nikki Bella after that vignette would get it, but she did not. What were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, definitely predicted Nikki Bella at the in the build up to this one, just based on that vignette on Monday. Just assumed that was going to happen. Think there were original plans maybe for Evolution that didn't get to take place, and they had to pivot and swivel. But hey, look, I'm extremely grateful that they didn't go down that route with Nikki Bella winning, and they've actually gone with Stephanie Vicaire, which I think is a phenomenal decision. I think that she's just been booked so strongly since coming to WWE, and that doesn't really seem to be sliding anytime soon. We've had a little bit of time recently on main roster where we haven't seen her so much. I think just in the last couple of weeks. So this will be quite interesting now to see her, being a focal point on Raw, being a highlight, being somebody who's going to be booked, strongly, and seeing a bit more of her in a main roster stance. So I'm definitely keen for that, and yeah, I'm sure a lot of other people will be as well. But the match itself, very very fun, very chaotic. There was a lot of personality involved here, as there will be with a lot of women in the ring. Yeah, there were some moments here that I quite enjoyed. I think the Secret Harvest, they had a big part of the matchup, and some eliminations and some moments for themselves I quite liked. I think that was well displayed from them. You've obviously highlighted over Kalani Jordynne and her homage to Kofi Kingston. Yeah, I think Zelina and Julia had a little bit of a moment as well. Zelina eliminated the United States champion, so maybe she's not done with her. And so I want to highlight the NXT girls. 3 of them, I think, got eliminated very quickly, very early, like right at the very start by Nia Jax, I'm pretty sure it was. But regardless, very early. But then some of the others lasted a bit longer. We saw a bit from Jada Parker, and she looked pretty strong until she got eliminated. Kalani Jordynne being in there for a long time as well, before she was thrown over the ropes. And then Lash Legend, who, survived until the very, very end, just being tipped to the post by Stephanie Vicaire. To have her be the runner-up, I did not see coming at all. I had no idea that was going to be the case here. But yeah, she had a great performance. So very pleased with her. Got a lot of eyes on her. I'm absolutely sure from this one. I think WWE are probably quite high on her as a performer. So maybe on NXT we can see a bit more of her singles competition style thing now that obviously she's no longer in the tag division. But every time she seems to be showcased, she seems to do very, very well, and there was no exception here from her whatsoever. Nikki Bella looked decent enough as well. No complaints from her, really, to be fair. Didn't really seem to lose a step either. But yeah, just ultimately really, really glad that Stephanie did get the win here. But so many women were able to have their moments, were able to shine, and were able to showcase what they can do in a very limited capacity. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I think, there's obviously so much that goes on in these matches. To have those moments is, is a blessing for everybody involved. So fair play to everyone. I think it was a good matchup for sure. I gave it an 8 out of 10. I just think there was so much going on. They tried to fit in as much as they could, and fair play to them for doing that. Yeah, like you said, the crowd maybe at times were a little bit sort of out of it and not entirely sure maybe if they saw what we were seeing. I don't know. But yeah, besides that, really, really fun watch, and what a great moment for Stephanie Vicaire and Last Legend as well. For obviously Steph winning, lasting until the end. But yeah, showcasing what they can do, and looking forward to seeing where Steph goes from here. Probably going to be for the Raw Women's Champion. More on that, going forward for sure. But great to see Stephanie winning.
Yeah, I think it's just hard. I think a lot of the spots that they had planned, I think, typically work better in a Royal Rumble than a Battle Royal. I think that could have been part of the issue. But yeah, regardless, I was very entertained. I felt like it was everything in there for me worked. Maybe just some bad angles for the crowds, who knows? But and I wonder if we would be hyped as much as we are now if Nikki Bella were to in fact win, or maybe someone else. But yeah, Lash Legend, I think I noted that as well. I think her last appearance was in a Royal Rumble, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. But she looked pretty good in that one as well. I think she just has that kind of look to her, and she has that factor where I think she very much will be playing a role in the future. I just didn't quite get it this night due to Stephanie Vicaire being in the same match. And as you mentioned, I've been disappointed to see her not being mentioned lately. But for her to beat out Lash and getting this opportunity at Clash in Paris, I couldn't be more happy for her. And I love the moment that she had after the match with her speech with Stephanie McMahon. I thought that was a very nice and heartfelt moment, and the crowd is clearly behind her. So yeah, WWE's age-old problem as of late, and that is, who do you put where? So many very deserving women. I think that's kind of the overall, message here for this entire PLE. But as for my rating, what did I give this one? I gave this one an 8 out of 10. So for all that mentioning of maybe the crowd not receiving it as well as they should have, still a pretty high rating. So yeah, another great match in this PLE. Let's move on to the main event. We had mentioned maybe the women's IC title match could have main evented, and maybe it should have. But I think it's fair to say after watching this main event, I think WWE knew what they were doing. They did a good job, and yeah, this main event, so much to talk about. But KP, how did you receive the match itself? Let's kind of treat those two things separately: the match itself, and then obviously the ending. How did you receive those?
Yeah, well, like we said, I was dubious going into this one, with this one, possibly being the main event. I was questioning as to why that was going to be the situation. But before we go on to why it was definitely deserving to have been the main event, let's talk about the match between Io and Ripley. It was really fun. I think both women, took the history between the two and sort of like used that to, define what they did in the ring with one another in this matchup. Obviously, Rhea Ripley has been very showcased of her lack of luck and good results against Io Sky in the past, and yeah, you can see that was probably affecting her psyche at points during the contest as well. The referee bump, then obviously leading to the Riptide, Rhea having Io down for a good 7 or 8 seconds, and then eventually being like, all right, well, this ain't happening right now. And then, yeah, I was thrown a swerve when they went to the top rope. Looks like Rhea was going to set Io up for the Avalanche Riptide. I was like, okay, well, that's what's going to happen here then, and then we're going to get a pinfall from Ripley. And then, Io reverses it, gets an Avalanche Spanish Fly. That was a really great moment. And then as the two are obviously lying down in the middle of the ring trying to recuperate, they don't get the time to recuperate because Naomi comes down, the Miss Money in the Bank of 2A25, and she cashes in a contract, whacks the contract over the head of Io Sky as she's trying to get out the ring to go towards Naomi, throws Rhea Ripley into the steel ring post, and then capitalizes, hitting the split leg moonsault onto Io Sky and winning the Women's World Championship to end the show. This was a really, really good main event. I didn't expect this to be the situation, whatever. We've spent so long seeing Jade and Naomi going at it, and obviously that went on into this show as well. We've seen Jade and Tiff be up in the face of one another, and we have though. We've seen Naomi and Tiff get in the face of each other on regular occasions on SmackDown, and will Naomi cash in? Will she not? There's been a lot of close calls, so I never actually once for a minute thought that we could have got Naomi cashing in on Io Sky or Rhea Ripley for the Raw World Title. So this was a really nice shock, really nice surprise. Didn't see it coming whatsoever. And as a main event, I think this delivered for sure. It had surprise, it had quality, it had a big fight feel to it as well. Even though the build wasn't great going into it, I think that was all pretty much scrapped, and we had a really, really good end of the show here. So all three women came out as stars in this one. No one suffered whatsoever, and obviously Naomi, she is now the top woman on Raw. I mean, fair play to her. She's had a great couple of years over in TNA, coming back to WWE, winning the Money in the Bank contract, now winning the Women's World Championship. It's been a hell of a rise for Naomi recently, and I got to give the the adulations to her. She's done a tremendous job, and she continues to be killing it in her current gimmick, and that's just the that's just the rewards now of what a good character can bring you. So fair play to Naomi, fair play to Io, fair play to Rhea. They all delivered on what was a really good Evolution show. I gave the main event a 9.5 out of 10. Just a little bit of confusion with the contract cashing in. There was a little bit of a situation, I don't know, hesitation, whatever you want to call it. That's my only gripe from this one, stopping it from being perfect. But yeah, what a great end of the show it was. It was a fantastic main event.
Yeah, I really struggled what to say on this one because, outside the obvious, this was an incredible match. I actually gave this one a perfect 10. Cash in, kind of redundancy or repetitiveness, whatever that moment was. Didn't feel like it was enough for me personally to take away from the match we got beforehand. And I kind of, at the beginning of this match, I was like, I'm not going to enjoy this match because I know Rhea's going to win. And these women proved us wrong. They tore the house down. You could argue there wasn't any house to be left to be torn down. But these women proved that they belonged in the main event. Rhea Ripley adding yet another accolade to her top women's matches, and Io Sky doing just the same. Yeah, I forgot about the Money in the Bank briefcase. I never once thought it would even be a thing on this side. Whether this was the original plan or something they pivoted on, we'll never know. It doesn't matter. The match itself was great, and the cash in was great as well. Yeah, this is one of those matches I feel like I can safely say will be an all-time classic. When we look back on this era, we'll look back on this match and think that was one of those matches you just had to be there, and the feelings that you experience throughout this entire match, whether you like or hate whoever. You had goods and bads, and you were heavily emotionally invested. But yeah, this was great. I think this continues the rivalry between Io and Rhea, and them showing signs of respect after the match as they should. That was a great moment as well. And then obviously Naomi winning, getting her respect after all the hard work she's put in her career. I'm excited for this reign with her as champion. Will be interesting, and I guess she's on Raw now, which fair play to WWE. Like I said, if that was the original plan or not, I did not see that one coming, and so that was it's rare in today's world to, especially in WWE, to get something legitimately that's surprising, and this was just that. But yeah, we've gone on a lot about this, but I feel like it's rightfully earned. This whole PLE as a whole, evolution. Um, I I would say it blew the first one out of the water. The first one was good as well, but this one blew that one out of the water. Every single match, kept waiting for a ball to get dropped, and I might even hit a little too much on that on my end because there really wasn't. Ball wasn't ever really dropped. Of course, there are matches that were better than others, but for us to walk through this entire card and not be able to point to a single match and say that one wasn't good, every match was good, great, amazing. Every match had its thing, and they were all different enough to where it didn't feel like we were watching the same match over and over. So an incredible alignment of the card, and if it wasn't already obvious, I think the women have placed their stamp on it. I think this should be an annual PLE. I think that's fair. I think they've earned that after this showing. One of the best PLEs of the year, if not the best. I think you could certainly argue that. Yeah, this was great. And KP, any further thoughts on Evolution as a whole?
Yeah, just want to, obviously you talk about Evolution and you talk about the first women's Evolution PLE that we had all those years ago. I think naturally you will compare the two of them. You'll compare this one to the first one, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think this event really highlights how far the women really have evolved since then as well. It is an ever growing division, and I think that they just always seem to improve and get better, and there's more depth, and they're just stronger, faster, quicker, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I think they really showed the WWE can put on a really good event when they're given a really strong card to play with, and these women, they just completely showed up and showed out here. This for me has been my favorite event of the year. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it or even gloss over the fact that it might be. No, it is. It is the best PLE that WWE put on in 2025, and it's not close. Not just because it's all women, but for the fact that consistently throughout the card there wasn't a bad match. I'm looking through my ratings, and I gave the lowest ratings to the tag team match and to Tiff and Trish, and they weren't bad by any means necessary. They were good matches, they were fun, and they impressed me in parts as well. But in every other PLE, there's always at least one match on the card that you're just like, all right, well, fine. No, that didn't happen here. That didn't happen. I don't know if maybe WWE have thought, this is an all women's PLE, so we have to take this deadly serious. We have to, make it as big as possible. But it shows that when they deliver a PLE of such stature, they put 7 matches on the card: battle royals, tag teams, singles matches, triple threats, whatever, title contests, a cash in, change of hands of a championship. It had pretty much everything you would want from a PLE, and it's got so many talking points. So I gave it an 8 out of 10 as a general. That's just the average sort of rating from all of my matches. It actually came to like 8.2 or something. But yeah, whatever. That's just the rounding. But yeah, it was a great event. My favorite event of the year so far. And like I said, it's not close whatsoever. But yeah, top quality performances from so many women on this card. We had women from NXT delivering, obviously the main roster, in the tag division, in the singles competition. Yeah, the plaudits can't be it can't be stopped from this one. But I had a great time watching it. It was a long show, but it was a really good show as well.
Yeah, it didn't ever feel like to me that, obviously much longer than the typical Triple H PLE. I didn't ever once feel like, well, when's this thing going to be over? Like every match was very much had my attention, and it didn't feel like it was dragging as a whole. Overall, I gave this one, I added up to an 8.5. I'm rounding it up to a 9 because it just felt like such a complete PLE. And Triple H was asked in the post conference here about having this as an annual event. He kind of pushed it off, and he says it's not really needed. The women are always kind of in the scene anyway, so it's not really needed for them to have it. He very much pushed it off, but said, I'm not going to say yes or no for definite. But I think, it's just, and if your side is, well, we should treat them the same, have an all men's PLE. I don't care. I think that would work just as well. So regardless, I think this night being about the women, though, they showed up, they showed out. This obviously was my favorite PLE as well, if that wasn't obvious as well. But yeah, I think from WWE's perspective, I think they need to do this again. But yeah, that has been the Evolution recap. A lot to talk about. Obviously, there was a lot of matches and a lot of talking points. Probably one of our longer reactions videos. But this was a great event, and so we're here to boast it. Not often we get to constantly put out positive things, and this was one of those nights. So lived up to the hype. So a great showing and a great podcast. So this has been another episode of The Push with Nick and KP, and we will be back shortly with the Raw, NXT, SmackDown recap this week. Otherwise, we'll see you soon. Take care.